Ah, is this sweet? I can't tell.
Okay, so I'm doing my top 10 albums of 2014. This year was a little bit harder, definitely, than last year. I listened to a lot more albums this year, and there was just a lot of much better albums that came out. So, even kind of like right before I made this, my list was getting shifted around a lot. So, but this is the finalizer. So the 10 best albums that came out this year. It's all fact, you know. I'm right, but number 10, I have Woven War and their self-titled first album. I went into this album with very low expectations. As I Lay Dying was a band that I liked, and and they were probably one of my more favorite metalcore bands. But I looked at them, and they really were kind of your, at least in my opinion, they were kind of a lot more of your stereotypical metalcore band. But they were like the only band that I think could pull that off really, really well and not sound, uh, you know, uh, like I've heard it before. It did sound somewhat fresh. And so when I heard that, basically, when Tim Lambesis was, after his whole incident, that the band was continuing with another band, I kind of didn't know what to think, really. I didn't know if it was just going to be As I Lay Dying Part 2, or if it was going to be their own thing. And with their self-titled album, Woven War, I mean, it did turn out to, in fact, be its own thing, which I really like. Again, there's hints of As I Lay Dying, which is understandable, because when you're in a band for, about 10 years, I mean, it's kind of hard to not write that way and kind of write differently. But it is very different. Some of the songs sound very much more, for lack of a better term, maybe radio friendly and catchy. Like, some of the best songs on this album were The Masons, probably one of my favorite songs from this album. And then also All Rise, which seems like it's about Tim Lambesis and his thing. And Death to Rights is another just awesome song. I mean, all the songs on this album are just written really well. That's kind of just in general. I'll just get that out of the way. My top 10 is that all of the songs on the albums are honestly written really well. But number 9, I have Arch Enemy with War Eternal. I heard Arch Enemy a little bit, and then we saw them live a couple months ago, and so then I listened to this album, and it's a really, really good album. They have their new singer, Alyssa White Gloves, and I for reference, I listened to the previous Arch Enemy album, and to me it almost sounded like there was a breath of fresh air with a new vocalist in. And I mean, not to say that if they weren't good before, but I mean, it just, again, it sounded like there was just a new life added in. And I mean, there's a lot of good songs from this album. Never Forgive, Never Forget, which is, I think, the first track after the intro. Is a really good song. I really like the chorus to that. War Eternal, the title track, is another song. I think the intro riff is just a slamming riff, and it's just awesome. And then another song was You Will Know My Name, is another great song. Again, this is just a good melodic death metal album, and it's just I kind of am kicking myself for not looking up this band and getting to know this band prior to this. So yeah. So that's Arch Enemy. Number 8, I have Sabaton with Heroes. My opinion of this album, I didn't have this album was okay. That was my opinion of it when I first listened to it. But over time, the album has just gotten a lot better in my eyes. I mean, the opening track, Night Witches, is probably my favorite song from this album. I think that chorus is just one of the best choruses I've heard all year. And then, of course, there's To Hell and Back, which was the song that they had out before, which has a slight folk metal hit to it, which hint to it, so I think that was just really cool. And then the ending track, Man of War, and Far From Fame are really cool. I mean, this album is, I mean, and it's not a bad thing. It's Sabaton doing what Sabaton does really, really best, which is writing really epic power metal about stuff from World War II, and they do a really good job of it with this album. At number 7, I have Alestorm, Sunset of the Golden Age. I was not a huge Alestorm fan before this album. I mean, I listened to the big songs that they had out, you know, Shipwrecked, Captain Morgan's Revenge, Keelhauled, and like Over the Sea. And that was kind of, you know, I was like, those songs are okay. And then I heard the song, you know, well, the song Drink for the first time, and I'm like, okay, this is actually really catchy, and this is really good. And the reason this album, because I even tried to listen to old Alestorm albums, and I really couldn't get into it too much. Because I think the old, at least in my opinion, the old Alestorm albums, it seems there was a lot more emphasis on like the lyrics, which I mean, I guess there should be an emphasis on the lyrics, and the orchestration, whereas like the guitars and stuff kind of, in my opinion, took a backseat. There wasn't many like good riffs coming out of. I mean, there were riffs in their old stuff, but I mean, it wasn't very riff driven. Whereas this album has a lot of really great riffs. Again, the main riff of a Drink is awesome. They do a cover of a Tayo Cruz song, Hangover, which is just. I listen to that song a lot. That song is just fun to listen to. It is just a really fun song. And then a couple of the other songs that stood out really, really much on this album was Magnetic North, where you know they experiment a lot more with like scream vocals, which they haven't done before, which I thought was interesting, and it gets heavy in the middle. And then probably my favorite song is Mead from Hell, just because it's just a weird like tempoed song, and it's just I don't know, it's where like again they kind of bring in a lot of their very like orchestrated elements that they have, the very piratey feel, and it just works really, really well with that song. I mean, even if songs like Wooden Leg from this album really aren't that good, the rest of the album really, really shines. So that was number 7. Number 6, I have Judas Priest, Redeemer of Souls. Again, this is another album that I didn't have high expectations for. You know, I was of the opinion that, of like a lot of people, that Priest had reached their prime, and that they were, you know, they're not going to write really great music anymore. But this album was actually really good. This album kind of, again, reminds me of classic Priest. It reminds me a little bit of Painkiller. I mean, it's not actually like Painkiller, but it is probably, this is the best that Priest is going to get. I'm not sure if they can write a better album than this. And this album just has, you know, the opening track, Dragonaut, is a really great opener to this album. And then there's just, you know, all kinds of cool songs on this album. But the beginning of the end, which is like the ballad towards the end of the album, is really cool, and I like it. And then there's Halls of Valhalla, which is like probably my favorite. Is definitely my favorite song from this album, because the intro is so epic, and the chorus is just equally as epic. And it's, again, it just gives you those old school Priest feels. And then the title track is good. March of the Damned rocks. And then the other major song that I noticed from this album is Battle Cry. Battle Cry is probably my close second favorite song on this album, just because, again, it has that Painkiller-esque feel and that old school Priest feel. So number 5, I have Primal Fear, Delivering the Black. This album was, when we did our halfway through the year list of top 10 albums, this was my number 1. But shortly thereafter, I stopped listening to this album. I kind of overplayed it. I kind of almost got tired of listening to this album. And basically until about a week or two ago, when we were like, hey, we're going to start making our list, I listened to this album again. That was the first time, honestly, since like July, that I'd listened to this album. And I mean, it's still, again, I still, it hurts that I over-listened to it, because now it's just, I kind of can't listen to it in long steams like from the whole album. But there are a lot of great songs from this album. I mean, the title track, Delivering the Black, is classic Primal Fear. Live and on Fire is like you know, cool rockin' track. When Death Comes Knocking, you know, is cool, and then probably my favorite song is "One Night in December," just because that's I don't know, everything about that song. It's kind of like half ballad, but it gets like epic, and there's like all kinds of cool harmonies in there. And yeah, it does rip off a riff from earlier in the album, but they make it work. It's just a cool part, and I mean, and it sucks that I did over listen to this album, because I mean this album probably would have been a lot higher on my list if I didn't do that, but because of that, it kind of brought it down in my eyes. Number 4, I have Epica, the Quantum Enigma. And again, this is another band like that I really got introduced to this year. I had listened to a little bit of Epica before, but this was the first like full album that I listened to, and I was kind of blown away by how intricate everything is with this album. Kind of a symphonic, melodic death metal band, and I just think it's all, you know, again, it's epic and it's all heavy at the same time. Simone, I think is what her name is. I hope I'm not butchering that. Is one of my favorite, female vocalists out there. Her voice is unique, and almost in times, in like, for example, the chorus of "The Essence of Silence." For whatever reason, her voice reminds me a lot of like show tunes, which is a weird thing, but that's kind of what I picture it as sounding like. And then lots of great songs. The title track is just a long, just like what 11, 13 minute epic. But I'm not sure if that's the correct length. But I mean, like it's a long, just epic song. Sense Without Sanity is another good one, and The Essence of Silence is again. It gets that good mix of like the epic choruses and the symphonic aspects going on, and then it also has like the really rockin' middle section where it gets like where it gets upbeat and like it just everything just works perfectly. I mean, I'm not sure if many other bands could pull this kind of stuff off. So number 3, I have Machine Head, Bloodstones and Diamonds. From listening to Machine Head's last 2 albums, which are both fucking amazing, I knew that this was going to be a really, really good album, but this album even did better than I anticipated. I mean, I didn't expect it to go this far. I mean, the opening track, Now We Die, is just awesome. The chorus is probably, again, up there with the Night Witches of Sabaton is probably my favorite chorus of the year, and just that song is kind of perfectly symbolizes this album as just being heavy, yet epic, and then there's the symphonic, like the orchestra during the chorus, and then and it does everything Machine Head tries to do. Like I said, it gets epic, it gets heavy. The middle section gets really gets really grody and epic, and then there's the cool Machine Head harmony that they do all the time, and that if another band did it, it would get really, really old, but it just works so perfectly for them, and this album just rocks. Night of Long Knives is another personal favorite song of mine from this album, but then I really, really like Sail Into the Black, just because it's so different from anything Machine Head's done. It's because it's all kind of almost piratey in a way, and I don't know how else to describe it. It's just cool that this band is still expanding their sound. They're not one of those bands that gets set in their ways and then they don't do anything about it for the rest of their career. So that's Bloodstones and Diamonds. Number 2, I have Plagues of Babylon, Iced Earth. This album was I think either my number 2 or my number 3 album halfway through the year, and after listening to it more and more and more, it's gone up in my opinion. Like, just the intricacies of this album. The title track is just one of the best written songs I think this year. And I said this when we talked about it when the song first got leaked or it was released. That it's not forced. It's a very fluid song. Everything goes naturally where it's supposed to go. And kind of all the songs on this album are like that. If I Could See You Now is another one of those great Iced Earth ballads that come out. Cthulhu is another. Right after that is another really cool song where they go with with the the Iced Earth choruses, which are all over this album, and I really don't have a problem with it, that every chorus is epic. Resistance is another awesome song, and then Among the Living Dead is another really good song. Like, all in all, like, probably even more so than any other album that I have so far, this is probably, like, I can honestly sit down and listen to almost any song on this album, and, and it's not like I'm forcing myself to listen to it. Like, if I put this album in and I put it on and I can listen to the entire thing one way through, and it's not like, this song again. I thoroughly enjoy this album. And then number 1, I have Exodus, Blood In, Blood Out. If you want an album that has riffs, there's no better album, I think. Even though I've gotten a lot more into power metal in the last probably year or so, I'm still a thrash metal guy at heart, and when this came out and this delivered all the thrash tunes that you could want, I was really happy. They got their original vocalist back, which is good, because I think that, again, as with a bunch of things, it brought new life into Exodus. I mean, they were still good before with their last album, the Atrocity Exhibit B. That was still a good album, and they still were good then. But this is 10 times better. I mean, the title track, Blood In, Blood Out, is really good, and so is other songs like, BTK, Collateral Damage, and then probably my favorite song is probably Salt the Wound, which has Kirk Hammett doing his world famous wah guitar solo in it, and then also BTK has Chuck Billy in it, and it gets really fucking heavy and brutal in it. I mean, like I said, this is just like, it is funny because, and it might have something to do with why I really like this album. It's that this album, I kind of forgot that Exodus was putting out an album, and I was like, oh. And then this album was really good, and it just kind of came out of nowhere in my eyes. And so, I mean, I think Exodus, especially if you love thrash metal, you have to pick up You have to pick up Blood In, Blood Out. It's a must-have for any thrash metal fan. So, yeah, that's my top 10 list, and alright, bye.